Good afternoon, Excellencies, Executive Secretary Dr. Robert Floyd, participants of the SnT, youth group members, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sitara Noor, and I'm a research fellow at Managing the Atom program at Harvard University's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. It is my privilege to moderate this session entitled Next Generation for the CTBT, Making the Youth Voices Heard. The session will begin with a keynote speech, followed by a panel discussion. It is my honor to invite our keynote speaker, Ambassador Abel Atlicum Ayoko. Ambassador Ayoko has a long, illustrious career in diplomacy, where he served as Undersecretary for Regions and International Organization for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria till 2019. Earlier, between 2013 and 2016, he was Ambassador of Nigeria to Australia, Slovakia, and permanent representative to the international organizations in Vienna, including the CTBTO, within which period he served as the chair of the CTBT PrepCom in 2015. From 2011 to 2013, he served as Ambassador, Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria in Geneva. His previous diplomatic postings include Stockholm and Lusaka also. In the IAEA, Ambassador Ayoko worked extensively, especially on nuclear security issues. He served as co-chair of the preparatory process for the Second International Conference on Nuclear Security, held in December 2016. In 2017, he led a mission of good offices on behalf of the IAEA Director General to Uganda, promoting the ratification of the amended CPPNM. Ambassador Ayoko is a member of CTBT Group of Eminent Persons and currently CEO of Non-Proliferation Process Africa, which is a non-governmental organization advocating and educating on the CTBT, the NPT, nuclear security, peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and non-proliferation in the continent with a focus on youth. Ambassador, please, stage is yours.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by commending the excellent leadership of the Executive Secretary, Dr. Floyd, and the dedicated team of the CTBTO PTS for putting together this wonderful edition of SnT, and for the clear effort to ensure diversity, including mainstreaming youth participation. Young people are dynamic and creative beyond imagination. By their vibrancy, they have claimed the future, and we trust they will make our world better. The least we can do is to support them, because when youth have a place on the table, they bring to bear new thinking, fresh ideas, and problem solving in a unique manner. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was adopted by the General Assembly Resolution 50/245 of 10th September 1996. The treaty was opened for signature on September 24th, 1996, and to enter into force 180 days after the deposit of the instrument of ratification by all states listed in Annex 2 of the treaty. At the time of opening for signature, many of the members of CYG were not yet born. Many of them were even toddlers. According to Article 1 of the treaty containing the basic obligations of states, I quote, each state party undertakes not to carry out any nuclear weapon test explosion or any other nuclear explosion, or to prohibit and prevent any such other nuclear explosions at any place under its jurisdictions or control. Each CEST party undertake furthermore to refrain from causing, encouraging, or in any way participating in carrying out any nuclear weapon test explosions or any other nuclear explosions. No doubt, 27 years ago, when these negotiations of the CTBT was concluded, I was there, and enthusiastically opened for signature in 1996. Member states, including myself, were optimistic that the treaty will enter into force within 3 years. As a matter of fact, judging from the number of state signatories during the first year, for example, President Clinton of the United States of America signed the treaty on the 24th of September, the very day it was opened for signature. It was generally believed, with very few doubt, that the treaty would be enforceable in less than 3 years. The possible delay then was calculated to likely be due to ratification regimes from different state members. But regrettably, 27 years after the treaty was opened for signature, with 186 signatures spread all over the world, and 177 of whom had ratified, the treaty is yet to come into effect. Reason being the clause in Resolution 50/245, to wit, it will enter into force 180 days after the date of deposit of the instrument of ratification by all state parties listed in Annex 2 of the treaty. There are 44 state members listed in Annex 2, and of this number, 36 have ratified the treaty. 8 members are yet to ratify the treaty, hence the continued delay in enforcement of the Lovely-Good Treaty. Our calculations and predictions are diplomat then that the treaty will come into effect in 3 years was deflated. Be it as it may, with the number of signatures and ratifications, CTBTO is one of the most widely accepted treaties in the world today. As a matter of fact, we see CTBTO as an international norm for which no one can derogate, it will be known. The treaty is thus already successful and should be sustained till it enters into force. Against the possibilities of weariness and lethargy, the international community, with a shared vision, must continue to mobilize action, share ideas, and create innovative solutions that will allow the CTBT to operate and achieve its objective. And therefore, to me, what is the way forward? I have listened to some of the panel discussions during the past SnT conferences and other international forums where the issue of CTBTO is being discussed. To some, like me, that were involved in the negotiations of the treaty, while some were satisfied with the increasing number of signatures or signatories and ratifications, and beautifully, the excellent working of the verification regimes of the organization, some feel that however efficient the verification regime has been, we should not be satisfied. More effort should be exerted to ensure that the treaty indeed comes into force. An important instrument in this regard are the youths. My conviction is that it is time we mentor the youth to take over the race of getting the treaty enforced. The CTBTO CYG, that is the youth, remains a veritable platform that can continue to act as voices and agents of the treaty across the world in the various countries. As the CYG members attain higher roles in their professional endeavors, the CYG of today will become the global leaders of tomorrow. The security, peace, and science nexus of the CTBTO CYG will play a role in pursuing research in areas of scientific and technical relevance to the treaty, thus contributing to its technical sustenance in the future. To some, We should name and shame the remaining Annex II state parties that are yet to ratify the treaty. I think personally that this would be counterproductive. The best approach, therefore, is to continue the diplomatic friendly rapprochement and leverage on the power of togetherness as proclaimed by the Executive Secretary during the opening ceremony. It is an engagement that we continue to encourage, convince, and engage the remaining 8 Annex II countries. In this regard, the shuttle diplomacy of ES, Dr. Fjord, to get several non-Annex II countries to sign and ratify the treaty recently must be applauded. One very important achievement of CTBTO is the verification regime, which is up and running perfectly. Today, no country can detonate or test nuclear bomb anywhere under the sea or in the atmosphere without being detected by the CTBTO verification regime. Like the Executive Secretary said yesterday, you test it, you'll be caught. Today, without doubt, the moratorium on nuclear tests, except for one country recently, has been enhanced by the CTBTO and its verification regime. The way forward. Majority of diplomats who negotiated the treaty years ago, including myself, we are retiring from the diplomatic service of our countries. The momentum to see the treaty come to effect should be kept alive. This can only be achieved if the baton is passed on to the young and the versatile youth all over the world that are desirous to see the end to nuclear weapons. They must be initiated, mentored, get informed, and be involved about the process of ratifications of the treaty. They must be lectured by the older generations of professionals who witnessed the effect and consequences of nuclear bomb detonation and the interests of humanity and the environment. The CYG fits into this space. The spread of CYG all over the world, including the Annex II states, has created a well-balanced avenue for grooming as well as mentoring young crew enthusiastic who will bear the torch. In its joint statement in 2016, the CTBTO youth group noted, as youths, those are the youths, they noted that as youth, we are future leaders of the world, and that's correct. The ones who will inherit and live in the world left behind us and the bearers of the hopes of and dreams of our children and their children after them. In another statement, the CTBTO youth group noted, we resolve to do our utmost in promoting CTBTO and its verification regime. We will engage our peers in open dialogue, participate in education of the general public, encourage scientific research and collaboration, and contribute to the work of CTBTO Preparatory Commission and the future CTBTO. CTBTO should continue with its collaboration with the universities all around the world. This is done by introducing and designing curriculum on the subject of CTBT, including history of the treaty, its prospects and challenges of enforcement, as well as scientific research programs that can improve upon the current verification regime. This is another vital way of promoting the importance of the treaty to the youth in the universities all over the world. There is a need to scale up public awareness through the next gen of the CTBTO. The 19th century was a race for nuclear power. The moratorium imposed by CTBT coupled with the effectiveness of the verification regime has reduced the race to secret laboratory tests. Most children of the 20th century are not even aware what the nuclear bomb was, because the last Big Bang test was more than 30 years ago. efforts must be intensified to ensure that the devastating effect of the detonation is not forgotten. The social media is the fastest means of communication today. WhatsApp, Twitter, YouTube, and etc. The use are more flexible, more interactive. It is well as better in the utilization of social media. With, for example, on Twitter, #BanTheBomb, we can be sure that the youth will eventually ensure that CTBTO comes into effect sooner than later. Before I close, please allow me to underline again the potentials of youth in driving advancement in technology, data analysis, and verification methodologies, contributing to the organization's technical capability. By this, I mean that each state hosting an IMS stations or an NDC should make effort to ensure that youths are exposed to and involved in their operations and maintenance. Same must also apply to the PTS, where I trust deliberate involvement of the youth in technical activities will be enhanced. Once again, I want to thank you for this invitation to present this to you, and I trust that what I've seen here over the 1 week that has been happening in CTBTO will continue. Thank you very much. Now hand over to the moderator. If there's any question, I'll be available to answer.
Thank you, Ambassador Yoko, for your wonderful keynote address. It is just a wonderful reminder that how much effort has gone into making the CTBTO possible. And this is also an additional reminder that why it is important to take it to its logical conclusion. And you are very right in saying that the youth group member has become an agent of change and representative of the of CTBTO at global level. And the next session is just a manifestation of what you have just said. It is my indeed pleasure to invite the panelists of the next session. Please come onto the stage so we can proceed into the panel discussion. So Ambassador Ayoko has provided a great segue to move into our next discussion. As I mentioned in the beginning, the panel discussion is going to be focusing on next generation for the CTBT, making the youth voices heard. The empowerment of next generation of experts capable of supporting the mission of the CTBT both politically and technically, and advancing the universalization and entry into force of the CTBT is a cross-cutting objective. The commitment is equally aligned with the UN system-wide effort of meaningful youth engagement outlined in UN Secretary General's Youth 2030 strategy released in 2018. The strategy encourages the UN system to advance programmatic work not only for, but with youth, enabling co-creation and meaningful youth inclusion in decision-making processes. Since 2016, the CTBTO has been a leading UN system agency in terms of next-generation outreach, raising awareness, and education providing the next generation of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation experts with capacity building research and professional opportunities. The venues for engagement with youth could be various, from strengthened partnership with civil society and academia, to providing support for youth-led projects, and integrating the next generation into planning and rollout of major CTBT-related events. The panel will explain some manifestation of these engagements that I just mentioned. The panelists will highlight the achievement of CTBTO initiative focused on supporting youth, best practice of next generation engagement formats, and discuss forward-looking actions. Moreover, it will also serve to raise awareness among experts, diplomats, and other UN entities in the work of the role of the young professionals to support the CTBT universalization and entry into force. With that, this is my pleasure to invite the first panelist, Maria Cipriana. Thank you for joining us today. Maria is joining in her personal capacity from New York, where Maria serves as the executive officer of the UN Secretary General. Maria brings a wealth of experience in partnership and youth engagement, having served from 2017 until very recently, which is March 2023, as CTBTO Youth Group Lead and External Relations Officer at the CTBTO headquarters. Prior to joining the UN system, Maria served between 2011 to 2016 in senior executive positions, office functions at the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe. Maria holds a PhD from MGMI University and a graduate of Harvard University's Armed Control Leadership Program. Maria, moving into the session, I think it would be just appropriate to start with you with the first question, which is, how was your experience as part of CYG Youth Group, CYG Task Force? And tell us a bit more about cooperation that the group and the CTBTO had with the other UN-affiliated organizations and institutes.
Well, thank you so much, Sitara. Great question, and it's such a pleasure to be here back in Vienna. Thank you so much to Executive Secretary Robert Floyd for joining us for this session. It's a real commitment from your side also to pursuing with the youth empowerment, and we're definitely very grateful for this. And of course, to Ambassador Yoko for your inspiring words. And what I've taken from your speech, it had so many highlights, but this power of togetherness, which you just went on highlighting, I thought it was absolutely fascinating and really want to take it from this session. I also want to highlight and to thank, and because I see in this room some of the amazing colleagues, I see Martin Kalinowski, Pierrick, I see Marius Yano, Dana, Eleonora, who are coordinating and supporting the work of the CTBTO Youth Group. So it's just amazing to see everyone here today. And Sitara, you are such an example, actually, of someone who has been with the CTBTO Youth Group for over 6 or 7 years. I think you've been with us since the beginning. So you're an example of unwavering commitment both to the CTBT and to the CTBTO Youth Group. So amazing to have you here as a moderator. I will be sharing 3 very short ideas, making sure that my remarks are very punctual, and they would be focusing on 3 things. And of course, I am speaking in my personal capacity in both my attendance here, and my remarks are in my personal capacity here and do not reflect the position of the UN Secretariat. So first of all, I would like to highlight how important youth has been for a number of years now within the larger UN system context, being a very important cross-cutting issue. It is under specific focus in today's UN agenda. Some of you might know the flagship report that has been adopted in 2021 by UN Secretary General, Our Common Agenda. One of the 12 pillars, so it's very important, has actually been on listening to and working with the youth. And just last year, 1 year after this agenda was adopted, 2022, UNGA adopted a resolution, 76306, endorsing the establishment of the Youth Office. You might ask me, why is Maria talking about this? to the CTBTO? Well, actually, I will show that in my third sequence of remarks, that we should be probably looking into making additional links with those new initiatives, because they can be additional reinforcers of the CTBTO youth work, bringing visibility to this amazing initiative that is being run by the CTBTO. When we're coming to the second point, and this is some lessons learned from my work as a task lead on the CTBTO youth force. I started back in 2017. I remember Sabine was one of the people, together with a few other colleagues, who was starting this initiative. I joined the team, and since then it's been an absolutely fascinating journey. And at that time, the CTBTO youth group was tiny. So the vision that we had was actually twofold, and it has proven to be a very successful vision. First of all, it was about having those transformative rather than transactional partnerships. What does it mean? It is about making sure that we go hand in hand with the CTBTO youth group, and it's amazing to see so many members of the group in this room today, and I know many more actually watching us online. It was about co-creating together rather than imposing something on the group, and it was also a lot about getting those grassroots voices heard, and then thinking together with them how we can transform it into specific programs run by the CTBTO under the CTBTO Youth Group brand. And secondly, it was also about ensuring that this amazing CYG brand gets more visible outside just Vienna headquarters, being visible much more to the world by partnering regionally, but also by partnering UN-wide. And this actually brings me to my last and third point. What I think makes the CYG so successful and so unique is how it has managed to build itself into an initiative that partners proactively with UNODA, with its Youth for Disarmament program. We have our contacts there, and it's incredible to see how the CYGs have been nurturing and building proactively this partnership. CTBTO Youth Group has also joined a few years ago the Global Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security and the Interagency Network on Youth Development. Why have those been important? Because they bring together over 20 to 30 different UN agencies, which, if there should be interest from the CTBTO, can actually be leveraged to build interagency initiatives, also once again scaling up the CYG initiatives. And finally, of course, we should not forget that the CYG can find a lot of partners within the VIC agencies, because nowadays, probably copying the CYGs, quite a number of other agencies that are part of the VIC have started very interesting proactive CYG or youth-related programs. So this can be an additional leverage. Sitara, I'm going to stop here because I can go on talking about the CYGs for hours, but we'll be very happy to continue answering your questions later on.
Thank you, wonderful, Maria. This is indeed heartening to see what you just underlined, but also acknowledging on my part as well that the members who started from the beginning, or even if joined later, has moved on to different career paths, but they have actually remained committed to the original focus that they started their association with the CTBTO as a youth group member. And the rest of the panelists are actually a true manifestation of that accomplishment, that these accomplished individuals are not only taking forward the youth group, CTBTO's youth group's mandate forward, but also adding value to whatever work in their fields they are doing. So I'll introduce them one by one, but I'll, in asking separately questions from them as well. So I'll start with Alice Saltini. Alice is an expert in nuclear arms control, risk reduction, and disarmament diplomacy. She works for the European Leadership Network as a research coordinator, contributing research and insights to the Global Security Program, which provides advice to the political decision makers on nuclear policy and risk reduction measures. Alicia is also a regional coordinator for CTBTO Youth Group and CTBTO CNS Research Fellow in 2022-2023 cohort. Welcome, Alicia. My question to you would be, considering your association with the youth group since your association with it, could you please highlight its role in affirming the next generation, actively supporting the CTBTO and your association since you joined the group, highlighting some of those activities as well?
Of course. Well, thank you, Sitara. Thank you very much. To respond to this question, I would like to provide a brief overview of my personal experience with the CTBTO and the CTBTO youth group, CYG in particular. But before doing that, I would like to touch on the foundations of my own interest on the CTBT and on the CTBTO's activities in promoting the treaty's entry into force and universalization. So my interest was first picked during my university studies when I first became acquainted with the treaty and its objectives. And since then, in my mind, the CTBT already represented the most logical next steps that would towards a genuine progress on disarmament in a way that would greatly reinforce not only the non-proliferation and disarmament regime, but also the NPT in particular. And so, you see, in today's situation where we have an outstanding divide between some countries' continued reliance on deterrence and some other countries calling to abolish nuclear weapons altogether, in my view, the entry into force of the CTBT really represents the most logical next step that all states should commit to take to advance disarmament. This is just really in a nutshell, but this is something that I've been strongly advocating for, and rest assured I'll continue to do so until it gets there. And on top of my interest in the CTBT, I was then involved with CYG activities during my stint at the CTBTO in the External Relations section. So there I had the opportunity to gain a deep understanding of the organization's activities, and one of my duties at the time, along with that of other interns back then, was to support the section with drafting and developing outreach strategies for remaining non-annexed states. And the area at the time that I was focusing on was Southeast Asia and the Middle East. But during that period, I was also well plugged into CYG activities. And so that overall, that experience really reinforced my belief on having civil society representation, in this case, the CYG, advocating for specific causes such as the CYG, and that is the CTBT. And this is because, what we actually touched on it with Dr. Floyd today, this is because civil society representation generally have more freedom and flexibility to engage in direct action. This is because the CYG does not operate in a framework of member states or diplomatic processes, such as the UN setting. And this flexibility and particular direct action capabilities of civil society groups like the CYG could be really highly effective in promoting specific causes, like the one that we're talking about today. And so with this in mind, after my stint at the CTBTO, I was really keen to continue promoting the CTBT message through the CYG, and in particular, to continue promoting the universalization efforts with non-annexed states. And so I became, in my personal capacity and as part of a CYG member, I started to establish connection with other think tanks in targeted countries, particularly in Southeast Asia, in order to promote dialogue on CTBT in those countries where this type of dialogue went a bit stagnated. And so to this day, I actually maintain contacts with directors of think tanks that were very keen to organize events with me in particular, but as part of the CYG, to contribute to the universalization effort. And one of such examples is actually a think tank in Nepal, where we actually had planned to organize and hold a joint event on the importance of the Nepalese ratification of the CTBT and to invite Nepalese officials to attend this event. And this event is actually still in the books, and perhaps we'll have a particular it would be particularly important as of today, and especially after the Executive Secretary's mission to Nepal. And this is again just an example, but this is just to reiterate the importance of continue advancing the CTBT through other channels, particularly the CYG, in a way that, in channels that would allow to engage really indirect action to support the CTBTO's mission. And then, like, final point, like, more recently I then took part to the CTBTO SnT Research Fellowship, where myself and my project partner, Ian, wrote a policy paper on obstacles preventing signature or ratification of the CTBT and our take on how to move forward from that. And I did that just really continuing my research that I had initiated during my time at the CTBTO, but taking it even a step further, because we had the greatest chance to actually corroborate most of our research findings with diplomats and ambassadors of permanent missions here in Vienna. Anyway, publications should happen very soon, and I'm really excited to, to share our policy recommendations and project findings with the CTBTO. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. This is so wonderful, and it also reminds us that how important it is and how necessary it is that the individual effort really go a long way in adding to the collective objective that we all share. And thank you very much for all your efforts that you have done. This takes me to our second panelist on the table, which is whose growth I have personally seen and really very impressed by how she has developed into a really effective voice for CYG. Ms. Madeline Vangaya. She is an early career geoscientist. She is currently a project manager at Sandrose Limited and is national point of contact for Space Generation Advisory Council in Kenya. She is member of CTBT Young Professional Network and CTBT Youth Group as well. She has spoken at various high-level UN events advocating for nuclear non-proliferation and ratification and universality of the CTBT, gender equality, as well as the inclusion and support of the young generation in sphere of nuclear disarmament. Maggie, thank you very much for joining us today at this session. For you, I would also like to start sharing your achievements of the Young Professional Network since its inception, highlighting its role in affirming the next generation, actively supporting the CTBT, how your experience has been and how do you see both joining hands in taking the objective forward.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity to be in this panel and to continue advocating for the CTBT. And so I have been a member for the CYG since 2016. And I recently joined the Young Professionals Network. In the CYG, I have had vast experiences as a member since joining, where I've participated in various initiatives and opportunities, and such as building Bridges Initiative, the Citizen Journalism Academy, the Newsroom Project, which was actually the first one that we did during SnT 2017. And also, in 2021, I briefed the UN Security Council on promoting CTBT through science and including the young generation in the sphere of nuclear disarmament and in the commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the CTBT. And looking at how it ties to the YPN, I think the opportunities that I got from the CTBT youth group led me to to know more about the organization and the opportunities that are there. And this led to me joining the YPN, which YPN is the Young Professionals Network, where I have participated through them, the Science Diplomacy Symposium last year. And in this, I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Floyd and Ambassador Clement on promoting gender equality and empowerment for early career women in STEM, as well as in this year's SnT, I am an associate of the Scientific Program Committee. And looking at YPN and what role it's played in affirming the next generation for the CTBT. Right now we have over 100 members from 40+ countries, including countries in Africa. And these are, and also not just from the NDCs, but also from the PTS. And now also for the membership, it's not just for the NDC or PTS staff, it's also covers people from the private sector or the public sector who are not in these categories, and they fall under the associate membership. And this organization or this group, it's a group of science and technology people who are interested in the CTBT and the CTBTO matters. And one big requirement is that you have to be below 40 years of age. But when you look at the YPN, what are the aims? One of them is to recruit highly skilled, motivated young scientists and technical experts, or help the recruitment into PTS and into the CTBTO. Also, to establish relationships to strengthen the collaborations within the CTBTO and all these other components, the NDCs and other scientific research institutes, and also enable the next generation to take on formal positions at the NDCs and PTS. So in this regard, as a member or as members of YPN, we have actually a lot of benefits, but I'll just highlight a few. One is we get to expand our network. Since joining, we have a pool of experts, and there's so much reach that I couldn't have before joining YPN as a scientist. Also, I have benefited from attending interesting events such as the SDS and the SnT. Also getting access to ideas, research, and experts through exchanges with our peers and mentors, getting input and inspiration for our assignments, and becoming a better technical expert, and also learning about career opportunities. So in terms of objectives for the YPN in the short term, it's to have or create a competent pool for technical experts who are competent to support the CTBT and are interested in developing the verification technologies, as well as to leverage on the CTBTO's unique role to, as a truly science and technology-driven organization, not forgetting the diplomacy side, and opening up the field to a greater diversity and gender balance. In the long term, it's about increasing the recruitment pool for experts, and also this includes the women in STEM, especially the early career women in STEM, and the experts from underrepresented geographical regions, and also expand the reach or network of technical experts and support of the CTBTO work. So in summary, so the key points for us as YPN members, or for the YPN, is having a generational shift, and this is not just in terms of the personnel or our expertise, it's also in terms of the technologies that are there. So YPN aims at enabling this next generation to be better placed to take on formal positions within the CTBT, of which is really interesting because it's about empowering the younger generation, who are the leaders of today, to be able to get ready to take up positions that will be required in the future, in the near future. So this is the spheres of the NDC, PTS, and various tasks that are related to, such as working group B, through the exchange of knowledge within the network. The other one is community for the next generation of experts, where YPN provides a platform to connect and exchange and learn. And also, finally, it's a forum. The YPN is a forum for science and technology only, so it does not address policy issues or accept members with a non-technical expert, but we will discuss further in my next engagement about YPN. Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalene, for sharing your experience, and I think it's truly inspiring and very encouraging for every one individual from the younger generation who is listening to your story. This takes us to our last, but certainly not the least, panelist, Ahmed Al-Sabag. Ahmed is a member of the CTBTO Youth Group and a former CTBTO CEST Research Fellow. He is also the global focal point for the peace and security at the major group for children and youth at the United Nations. He contributed to several consultations on the agenda of youth, peace, and security, and co-led the negotiations on behalf of the UN-mandated youth groups, an endeavor that established the United Nations Youth Office with Peace and Security as a top mandate. Ahmed, based on your experience as part of the CTBTO youth group and the research fellowship both, how did this influence your professional career, and how do you, what highlights do you think, what are the career highlights in that particular association that you definitely would want to highlight here for inspiring others?
Well, thank you, Sitara, first of all, for posing the question. I'm really grateful to be here on this panel with some colleagues that I worked with, and to be invited by the CTBTO to be here on behalf of very well-rounded young people who have an objective of ending nuclear testing. Of course, what has been said is more than enough, but maybe I would share my experience in a different way. Coming from the Middle East, coming from a country that is signatory but an Annex II state, Egypt, the feature or the topic of peace and security has always been in the core of my early life, but also in my academics and in my professional life. The CTBTO youth group is not only a network that assembles the youth professionals around the world for a purpose and a mandate, but it is also a bridge for young people to go and speak to those who are decision makers and policy makers in international organizations. The international organizations have been always seen as a place for only member states to speak and for intergovernmental discussions and processes. But this turned out today to be not true, given the multilateralism that is being reinvigorated nowadays. The CTBTO youth group has given me the chance, actually, to attend the high-level CTBT Friends of the CTBT in New York last year, where I first met actually Dr. Floyd. This was an opportunity where I had met with Prime Minister Kishida of Japan. And this was something that never happened before on a very formal occasion on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly Week. At that time, I felt that, no, this is not only about a network, but we can do something. We can do something that is meaningful, that it is not only about the participation of youth, but it is always about how to engage and what is the end that we need. During this meeting with Prime Minister Kishida, I emphasized that the multilateralism was actually something that is not only about member states, but that the roles now are different and that even the young people could engage in several ways. So this is what the CTBTO youth group is about. Also in my case as a research fellow of the CTBTO SnT fellowship, it was a great opportunity to go into something that I have never had a background about, which is the non-proliferation and arms disarmament. We have always been in this mistake where youth, peace and security was segmented in a way where arms control is not part of. And I think that this is something that needs to be changed, that also needs to be reviewed with ongoing processes that are happening at the United Nations. Lastly, but not least, it's also important to emphasize that the research fellowship is an assemblage of young professionals who come from different backgrounds. So it is very important to know that it's not only about international affairs, but we had people who have backgrounds in nuclear physics, in chemical engineering, and so on and so forth, so even negotiations. This is what was good about the research fellowship. We had many members who are from Annex II countries, who are even from non-signatory states. This is something that leads to an objective that we need and that can be doable.
Thank you, Ahmed. That's fascinating. And also thank you for highlighting and underscoring the importance of multilateralism, which is certainly very important, and also putting on the table some of the challenges which are specific to your region, because this is also very important to understand what are the challenges specific to certain regions, so that a cumulative effort can be made to not only address the challenges which are specific to certain regions, but which ultimately provide a venue or provide a way to lead to the ultimate goal which we all share jointly, that is universalization and entry into force of the CTBT. Thank you for sharing your perspective. This, I think, sets the stage for the next round of question, which I would definitely want to delve into, and I may kindly remind the panelists to please keep your remarks slightly shorter so that we have some time for the question and answer from the audience as well, because I'm fascinated by the discussion, but definitely it's important to have some input from the audience as well. So I'll start with you, Maria, because you talked about a number of opportunities, a number of avenues which do exist and which can be tapped into and which can actually be a possible way forward as we move ahead. So what are the possible inspirations for the next generation of experts, diplomats, and UN system organization to support the CTBT through research, engagement, and advocacy? Some of them you did refer to briefly, but I would appreciate if you can shed more light as to for the future prospects.
Thank you for this great question, Sitara. And going back to actually what you said a few minutes ago, I do agree with what my fellow panelists have been mentioning. Individual effort does go a long way, and I think these have been amazing examples of how individual CYG members could make a real difference in terms of promoting the treaty. Going back to your question, I think one of the interesting things that the CYG can further develop is actually developing this interdisciplinary cooperation, because everything today is a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030. It's a lot about climate change. It's a lot about disarmament, and it's linked to development. So I think positioning itself as an innovative initiative which looks at what it does, of course promoting its primary objective, the entry into force of the CTBT, but also seeing how it can capitalize on various additional fora to make its message heard, can actually be very empowering. And here, for example, I'm thinking about the high-level political forum happening every year in summer at New York headquarters, the SDG Summit happening this year, of course, in September. But there are also other interesting venues that can be further discovered. For example, the Science, Technology, and Innovation Fora, which also runs every second year. So looking into those interdisciplinary connections can be a great way forward. I'm also thinking about finding potential partners in other disciplines, because learning, for example, from what has been done with climate change, like just looking at this amazing, inspiring youth movement supporting it, we can also probably capitalize on this, sensitizing young people to the importance of nuclear disarmament. And here I'm going back to what has been said at the Science Diplomacy Symposium back last year, when a number of speakers noted that CTBT is definitely the most youth-supported treaty you can actually see globally. So I think this is just a fantastic momentum we should continue building on. I also think that what Dr. Floyd is doing, having this very open secretariat, which allows the CYGs to really be a bridge between senior decision-making, but also between colleagues within the CTBTO Secretariat, is an amazing thing, because one of the things I have been hearing while working with the CYGs is very often UN is seen as a fortress, and it's very hard to understand that it actually has this very nice human face, like all the colleagues sitting in the room with whom it's actually possible to engage and to build connections. So I believe that the open secretariat possibility is also a great initiative.
Thank you, Maria, for sharing that. And I think with that, what just Maria said just now, and even in her opening statement in the response to the first question, I think it would be appropriate to hear from the CYG members and the rest of the panelists also, from your perspective, what do you think are the important next strategic steps which would actually, pave the way for the universalization and which should be actually adopted by the CYG? Starting with you, Alicia, could you share your perspective, what in your view and from your unique perspective and how you see going forward, what could be the next important strategic steps for the CYG?
Sure. So the first point I would like to make is that I believe that the CYG would truly greatly benefit from building connections with like-minded groups that have already a well-established policy impact and that share the same objectives in the field of disarmament and non-proliferation. For instance, the organization that I'm working for, the European Leadership Network, a couple of years ago established a network of young experts and young leaders working in the security field. And most of the members are early to mid-career individuals with well-established career already and policy impact, and most of them, some of them actually even work for governments and embassies. And YGLN is extremely active in the non-proliferation and disarmament arena, particularly in the NPT. And actually, a current project that we're working on, sponsored by the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, sees this group, so YGLN engagement with former decision makers aimed at finding new ways and new approaches to reinforce the NPT regime. And so as a result of the similarities with the CYG, I truly believe it would be greatly beneficial for the CYG to establish connections with such groups. And that was my first point. And then the second thing I would like to delve into is specifically on non-annexed 2 states and what can the CYG really do to promote the universalization efforts. And firstly, along the same lines of my involvement with Nepalese think tanks, this task, for instance, could be taken on by other CYG members and be expanded into other regions, particularly in countries where the dialogue on the CTBT has stagnated a bit. And so, in particular, the CYG could foster connections or launch educational activities specifically targeted to promote dialogue on CTBT on the remaining non-annexed 2 states. And for instance, the CYG could establish a network with think tanks that are based on targeted countries with the goal to amplify policy influence and ultimately to impact those political bodies whose signature or ratification of the CTBT ultimately would depend upon. And secondly, as I said several times before, civil society representation allows for a quicker, a more direct action that the CYG can undertake. And with that in mind, I believe the group should foster connections with ongoing initiatives and establish groups that have the capacity to appeal to specific societal and religious values of communities with strong parallels with the CTBT end goals. For instance, some of the old-out non-annexed 2 states have strong societal and religious values based on peace, tolerance, and environmental conservation, which adhere very well with the CTBT foundations and end goals. For instance, peace and environmental protection are at the forefront of Buddhist values, but are even more entrenched with Bhutanese societal values, making actually environmental conservation one of the 4 pillars of the fascinating philosophy endorsed by the Bhutanese government on gross national happiness. And in fact, in its constitution, Bhutan, it's actually mandated in its constitution that Bhutan preserves 60% of its land under forest cover. But this is really just an example, but this shows very well how some societies and cultures share these foundational values and end goals of the CTBT. And I believe the CYG could capitalize on that. So all of this to say that appealing to public figures or leaders, even religious leaders, on the importance of the CYG from a peace and environmental perspective, and in particular on the detrimental effect of nuclear tests from humans on humans and on environment, I believe would have a very strong impact on most of those communities. And this task could be undertaken by the CYG because of its advocacy nature, and of course, as we said, because of a quicker action that this group can take without significant restraint. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. That's an interesting idea, to aligning CYG's goals with the ideological and the social values that countries already possess. And by nature, that's already aligned, but definitely that aspect needs to be amplified. Thank you for emphasizing on that point. Magdalene, could you specifically talk about some of the CTBTO, considering your experience with that, and how do you see that some of the, for going forward, what can be some of the activities that they can adapt, which would definitely affect CTBT's goal?
Okay, thank you. So for the YPN, I at times feel like I'm not the right person to be speaking about it because I have this wealth of knowledge from the CYG. But looking at the little time that I've been able to engage with the group and with everyone there, I think the first thing that I will say is building up on existing programs. So YPN has an exchange program where members get to access ideas, research, and even experts that help develop, developing one's scientific nature and also the professional life. And in terms of the experts, it's experts who are related to all the technologies that the CTBTO applies in its verification regime, and also how to run NDCs. So it's not just limited to this, but it's really broader. And the opportunities, when you look at this exchange program, there's an opportunity to even go to research institutes such as NOSA, or there's another one in Vienna. I don't know how to pronounce it. It is ZAMG. So there are really very many opportunities that the youth or the young people in YPN can get to, and building up on this and getting to have more people participate, especially from underrepresented regions, and even encouraging early career women to participate. Not just, I feel like the programs are there, but it's not really out there or promoted enough so that people can get the initiative or get that initiative to take these opportunities. Also looking at my experiences in my short time at YPN is they've already provided me with various opportunities which I'm really grateful for. And if they could continue supporting people like me, people from developing world, I'm a woman in early career. So giving us these opportunities also goes a long way in developing not just the professional side of us, but also our personal lives, and building the confidence and knowing that in as much as we don't have some opportunities in our regions, there is opportunity, or there is reach for these opportunities through the CTBT, and through our training or the development that we do in preparation, because again, one of the objectives for the YPN is to prepare the members to work for the NDCs and also for the PTS. So through this, there's a lot of opportunities for us. The other one is scientific collaborations and partnerships through looking at the NDCs, promoting this, maybe regional collaborations, doing research. On the first day of this conference, I was thinking about how we can, this idea just came to me of how we can use science to look at the things that are already happening in the world, and just looking at the, I don't know if this is going to be controversial, but the dam that was blown up in Ukraine, and how, even though we are so far in Kenya, we can be able to access this data through IMS, and we can be able to collaborate as scientists to be able to look at even reviewing how this affects over time. Not just, we have the data before this event happened, and we will have data, after this event has happened, and we can be able to collaborate as scientists from all over the world. And the beauty of today is that we can do it virtually even we don't have to be in the same room to do it. So the other one is to encourage the members to participate in the opportunities that are presented. So I'll just quote one of the YPN members. Yele Asnik said, he advises young professionals to ask their NDCs to support their travel to Vienna to participate in the working group B meetings and to have that experience, as well as the interface between science and diplomacy, because the beauty of the CTBTO is that we have this scientific side, which is not independent, but it works together with the diplomatic side, you know? So, and this, he said, is a really great opportunity for learning, and I think that is what I will say about the YPN, yeah.
Thank you, Maggie. I think controversy is good, but I think as Ambassador Yoko in his keynote speech mentioned that let's focus more on where we ally, so alignment can find a way going forward. So that's very important to highlight as well. But that takes me to Ahmed. Moving forward, Ahmed, what are some of the innovative ways and strategic options going forward, specifically considering some of the unique challenges that your region faces? So how do you see going forward some of the steps forward?
Sure. So, of course, the engagement of youth today is much more flexible and innovative than any time before. As Ambassador Yoko just said recently, that this is a generation where they are using the Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. So they are nowadays more able to reach their goals with less cost. This is the first thing. Of course, with regards to the CTBT, I think that the young generation who wants to advocate to this needs to work more on an international level, given that it is really hard to be working on a national level, given the sensitivity and national interest and national security of this topic in most of the countries. However, what I have seen is that during my engagement at the high-level meeting for the Friends of the CTBT last year in New York, it was well seen in my country. It not only gave me confidence to speak more about that in a louder perspective, but it made the government think that, okay, there is a generation that is going to be speaking up to this level. So I think that this, in a few years, might change the thinking of governments, given that those generations are going to be most likely be the leaders of tomorrow. Of course, there are some forums that I want to mention specifically, including the Economic Social Council Youth Forum that is being held at the United Nations every April of every year. This is the largest forum and platform for youth to engage in intergovernmental formal and informal consultations to what relates to the SDG agenda. I was disappointed that this year, being the coordinator of the ECOSOC Youth Forum, the SDG 16 panels were removed because the UN Secretariat thought that youth are not enablers of peace and security, which is not true from my side of point. Why is that? Because we have seen in the very few years before 2022 that they were enabler, not only about peace and security, but maybe about climate change and security and other form of security when it comes to migration and so forth. I want to emphasize on something that Maria just said, is that the UN just issued a policy brief that is stemmed from our common agenda that looks more on the meaningful participation of youth in decision-making and policy-making processes. And I think that we should start thinking that young people should be engaging beyond the intergovernmental discussions. We need to take advantage more of the UN Youth Office that was recently established. There are different ways to prove that the youth engagement was successful, especially in youth, peace, and security. The UN Security Council resolutions 2250, 2419, and the very first Secretary General report on youth, peace, and security, they were all drafted by young people, edited, and approved by young professionals within the United Nations system. That means that they are still successful and they can do something. So I appreciate that there is some way of rethinking the youth engagement, but I believe that we are on the right way, especially to get to our objective, which is ending nuclear testing.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you for underlining some of the challenges, which would have been my last question to the panel, but I think it's just about time to open the floor for some questions. If there are some questions from the audience, please, yes, sir, please take, there is mic on your right side or the left. You can go forward, go there and. Please introduce yourself and identify which panelist you are referring your question to.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for the opportunity. I'm Mr. Joel Obengo from Kenya. Actually, I joined CYG in 2018, and I'm familiar with almost all of you who are there. Congratulations for the work well done. Now, my question is to Maria. I wanted to know maybe how your membership in CYG team has impacted on your professional journey. It's a very good lesson that can be learned by maybe CYG members who are in this side of the room. So we would like to know how it has impacted your personal journey. I must say there's a lot of benefit to be a member of the CYG. At least some people from my village who are not aware of the CTBT are aware today because of my engagement with the CYG. I've been able to hold small-scale seminar in our university, something that has made so many people to know. And I must also say that I benefited a lot by collaborating with the other CYG members, one from Pakistan and from Nigeria. And we are currently working on a paper that is under consideration in a peer-reviewed journal. And when it comes to fruition, we'll share with you. So in our small way, we are engaging with both policy and other publics so that we can contribute to the overall debate about CBT, CTBT, and CTBT-related activities. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Maria, would you?
Yes, thank you. Fantastic question. And thank you so much also for your engagement with the CYGs and for everything that you have been doing. I think this is just such a great example of how each and every one of us who are part of this, who wants to put a final end to nuclear testing, can contribute spreading the word in our local communities, building interest in the work that the organization does, and also showcasing its value. When it comes to professional journeys of various CYG members, I think we have a number of fantastic success stories, both on this podium and also in the room as well. I have known, because I have seen the CYG develop and get older also a little bit, I have seen some of those beautiful stories of members who joined us right at the beginning, going on to become career diplomats, working on nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation issues, going on to study and write fantastic papers and do academic research related to the CTBT. Sitara is actually one of those examples. She has recently ended her Harvard fellowship, so I think that's just an amazing example. And we have seen also many more, for example, like Alice, who went into advocacy, but also into the think tank world where the flag for the CTBT is being held. I think also what we should continue talking about, and this was actually my question, like listening to this fascinating discussion, is how can we further link the technical and more of the policy aspect of the work of the CYGs, because Maggie, with her really interesting intervention on the role of the YPN, she has really been highlighting how important this project is also in terms of building new capacity that is afterwards supportive of either the work of the CTBT or of the CTBTO as an organization in itself. And the question, an open question I'm going actually to conclude with, is how we can further build those science diplomacy plus technical science advisory capacities, pulling those resources together.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much to all the panelists. My name is Josephat Mulwa from Kenya. I work in the University of Nairobi. Congratulations to all panelists for very thoughtful discussions, fruitful messages. Now, mine is not to any particular person. It is to all of you, even those who are online, even those who are in Vienna. We can talk about the SDGs, we can talk about IMS performing well, we can talk about us using IDC data, IMS data and IDC products, but His Excellency, the Executive Secretary here, would rightly confirm to us that one of the challenges he's facing in the organization is not lack of staff, is not lack of experienced staff, those are there. The challenge he's facing is zero budget growth. So how can the CYG, the YPN, what initiatives, what mechanisms can you put in place to ensure that CTBTO's kitty is not depleted in the next year or 5 years? What do you intend to do to ensure that member states can pay what they have committed to pay? I'm sure the Executive Secretary will be very happy if you come to him and tell him, oh, country X has decided to increase its contribution by 5% or 10%. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, but I wonder if one of the panelists is qualified to answer that question. So let's try to find that answer of this panel, perhaps in your personal engagement with the CTBTO staff and the Executive Secretary himself, who is the seated here. So is there any other question from the audience? If not, we can quickly take 30 seconds from each of you to just quickly, if you have some final thoughts, some final message that you want to share with the audience here and the online. Maria, can you start? Or
okay,
yeah.
Sure. Well, you're just throwing me in water like this, but it's fine, yes. Well, I think the message is very positive. There are definitely solutions. There is a lot of youth energy, a lot of youth engagement, also a lot of, I think, gratitude. And in a good way, the need for the CYG is evident. I think that's what this discussion has been highlighting, like how important it has been building those youth capacities supportive of the CTBT, and that there is strong interest and commitment for more than 1,700 young people globally in continue doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Alice, in 30 seconds.
Yeah, so to reiterate what Maria said, I think what we can take home today is the importance of actually youth engagement in a way that would support CTBTO's primary objectives. Yeah.
All right. Maggie.
So I'm going to begin by echoing what Aline said on Monday about us as the youth being given the opportunity, but there's also the responsibility of we as the youth to take up these opportunities, not just to sit down and relax, you know, and also encourage us. Being a scientist, I think I'm biased, but to foster these cooperations and coming to the SnT is such a great opportunity to get in contact with people and be able to come up with beautiful and wonderful things in the science world.
Thank you. Ahmed, you has the last word.
Yeah, thank you, Sitara. So I think that ending nuclear testing is not only an objective of the CTBTO, but it's also a mutual ethical commitment for the humanity that we pledge as young people to always advocate for this mandate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we have also come to the end of our panel discussion. Thank you so very much for joining in, and join hands in thanking my panelists as well for such wonderful presentation and engagement. Thank you so very much.